The Marty and Laura Show is brought to you by Veterinary Village. With locations throughout Wisconsin, Veterinary Village is dedicated to enhancing the quality of animal and human lives today and into the future. Welcome to the Marty and Laura Show. We are keeping up. We are keeping up with both of our schedules. I'm not even sure what time zone Marty's in. I'm not sure
I'm not.
Marty knows what time zone
Not
she's
sure.
in.
I'm
So,
back in Central. I'm in Central time zone. I'm not
okay.
close to home,
Woo,
but
woo.
I'm in the middle of the country.
Well, just a lot further south than your
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it's warm and sunny here. It's very exciting.
What? What?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
know.
like it. I like it. All right. So, Marty, I think we decided that today we're going to hit a pretty hot topic for folks, and it is the concept of dog parks and doggy daycare and things that I think a lot of people incorporate into their lives with their pets without thinking about it because it's convenient. And
Yes.
it is convenient. And so, we can't just say no. But on the other hand, I think that there are issues with these topics that people maybe aren't aware of or don't think about. And
Right.
so I thought we could kind of walk through some of that.
Yeah, it's not only convenient, but it's mainstream. It's trendy. It's kind of the thing people are doing. And so I think it's really important that we discuss the pros and cons to these social activities that dogs can participate in.
Yeah,
So yeah,
100%. So let's start with doggy daycare. Okay,
sure.
so many people have pets, they work, they want to give their dog more exercise or more social interaction, and so they arrange for a doggy daycare setup. And some of these can be, you know, set up well, and some of them
Yes.
are not as conducive. So let's talk through some of that.
Right. So some of them are run really well. So I don't want to put a blanket
Right.
on everything and say that they're all negatively associated. But there are some that are really done well and some that are really not done well. I think the most important aspect of a daycare experience for the dog is that it's regular, it's scheduled, and you know the play group that your dog is going to be in,
Right.
rather than having it just be, some inexperienced dog person that opens the door to the crate or the kennel or
Whee!
the run and just lets everybody out together, where there can be a real brouhaha and create some significant injuries, illnesses, and other issues. So I think knowing the organization that you're using, the location you're using is really important. That you go, maybe you stop in without an appointment so that you can kind of see what they do when you're not looking. That they have cameras so you can see what happens when you are looking, and that you meet with the people who are going to be not just owning the facility or running the facility, but actually in the play group that your dog is going to be in.
And what are some great questions? So if I'm going to take my, you know, what, 8-month-old puppy into this setting, what are some of the questions you want to ask of the facility about how they're arranging these playgroups?
Right. So first, how do you determine what dogs go into which play groups? A
Mhm.
lot of times it's by size, but that may not necessarily be the solid answer for everything, because you may have a large dog that's shy or a small dog that's particularly bold. So just because they're sized accordingly, that may not be the most appropriate play group. I think it's important that you ask what their parasite control procedures are. What do they do for flea and tick? What do they do for heartworm preventives, which also include intestinal parasite control products? What do they do for frequent and assessing fecal samples to make sure that they are negative slash no parasites seen? Because there are different kinds of fecal tests. There's the kind that just looks for the eggs, and then there's the kind that looks for the proteins to make sure that you don't have something like Giardia or an early infestation of roundworms or hookworms. I think vaccines are really important.
Mhm.
For instance, a lot of people do distemper and parvo. Of course, they require rabies, but do they do the three-way Bordetella? Do they do it as the intranasal, the oral, or the injectable? Do they require influenza vaccines? What other things are they requiring? And then what does the play area look like?
Mhm.
Is it fenced? Is it does it have trees in it? Are there opportunities for parasites? Like, is it on pea gravel or concrete, or is it on grass? And how are the areas kept clean so that the feces are picked up and the dogs aren't exposed to it? What do they do for water bowls? Do they share a water bowl? And this is going to apply to the dog park as well. What do they do for treats? Are they, if you have a dog that has a food sensitivity or you are strict about their diet, do they allow for those things? Like, there's a lot of nuances to this that you can't just go, here's the leash, bye, have fun. So we need to have some pretty good idea, how often are the dogs bathed? How are they assessed for illness? What are the details of what's going
Right.
on at the facility?
And there are organizations that your facility may participate in that offer some of these standards. The boarding kennel, is it the Boarding Kennel Association
Yes.
of
Yeah,
America?
there's a boarding
Daycare.
kennel association. There's the APDT, which is the Dog Trainers Association. So definitely want to work through whether the location that you're taking your dog to is affiliated with one of those. Is it affiliated with a veterinary clinic? That there are some that have a vet clinic associated with it, which is going to give you some idea that the veterinarians at the facility are overseeing some of this medical care, making some of the decisions, and that if something happens, say your daycare is next door to the vet clinic, if there's a catastrophe, is there emergency care available? So those are some nuances to this.
Like that. That's really good. I worked a billion years ago in a very, very, very large and successful boarding kennel facility in Nebraska that had started offering um, doggy daycare early, in this
Mhm.
trend of what became popular. And they had a really fabulous setup, obviously well run, but they had an indoor play area, and it
Mhm.
had a pool, and it had this, and it had that, and it had really good ways to manage the situation that I thought was, of what I've seen, probably my favorite.
Mhm. Right. And so those are the things to ask are if there is a pool, who supervises the pool? How does the dog learn to swim? I mean, I think pools are great. They're wonderful exercise. They're good for rehab. There's a lot of good things with it. But again, is the dog just going to get thrown in and sink or swim? Or is there somebody there that's going to help the dog learn to swim? Because inherently, dogs can hold their head above water, but they may not be effective at swimming.
I
That
spent
may
my
make them fearful.
I spent my childhood teaching the Clumbers how to swim. So seriously, you guys, come on, for real. Check it. First Clumber we've ever had. We go out, we're at the pond, we're, doing the thing. Clumber jumps off the dock to retrieve the thing and sinks to the
Yeah.
bottom. And we're like,
Huh.
hello. Literally, we had to go pull him out. And
Yeah.
so seems contraindicated, since Clumber Spaniels are hunting dogs who have to swim to pass their field tests. And so my childhood was spent in the water with the Clumber Spaniel, lifting their little back ends up, teaching them that they could use their little back feet so that they would stay horizontal.
Because otherwise, dogs paddle really hard with their front feet and they go boom right down.
Yep,
So, yes.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay. So doggy daycare. I love pools. And I
Oh,
think they
yeah.
have a lot there, particularly from the client's perspective. Oh, it's so fun. They're gonna have a pool day. Well, I mean, it is fun, but what happens when your French bulldog accidentally gets knocked into the pool?
Yes. They're not good at swimming. Corgis, they don't have a rudder.
Mm-mm,
Frenchies don't have a rudder.
mm-mm.
So, and Frenchies are, they're top heavy. And so there's just a lot of things that can go wrong with that. So now I've had puppies fall into the pool at my house, and it turns out 4-week-old puppies can swim, but not very effectively. So and you don't want to have anything, whether it's the pool or not the pool, that's related to a, something that creates an anxiety situation.
Yeah.
Like a German Shepherd accidentally got left out with the small dog play
Mm.
group. The kennel didn't hold, or the dog, somebody
Right.
wasn't looking,
Right.
whatever, and
Right.
the dog gets rolled by a big scary dog. That's going to permanently affect that dog's psychology
Mhm.
in their opinion of the facility and all those things. So I think it's important that you assess what's going to happen. And if your dog doesn't want to go there, if it's not excited when you get there, now the first time they won't know, but if you've been there a couple of times and the dog doesn't seem thrilled to just hop out of the car and go in and see their little friends, maybe you need to find a different facility because maybe something happened there. And sometimes it's nobody's fault. It's just
Yeah.
an unfortunate set of
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah. And I don't, again, important for listeners to understand, we're not banging every single daycare, anything like that. But
No, no.
just be aware and be thoughtful about the things that you're doing with your dog. And if you are someone who's listening who works at one of these facilities, review your standards, review what you do, and think about that and see what you can do to maybe up level your facility and some of the services you offer.
Right. And I think something that pertains more to boarding than to doggy daycare, but sometimes they do both.
Hmm.
And
A
sometimes the
lot of
people
times.
that go to a weekly, like every Wednesday, they drop the dog off, decide that they're going to board the dog for a week or two of vacation. I think it's really important that these facilities have a scale, a
Mhm.
walk-on platform scale that the dogs can walk onto, and at least on a weekly basis when they're boarding, or you can do this if you're taking them to daycare, weigh them weekly and see what their weight is doing. Because especially at boarding facilities, some dogs don't eat particularly well. They may have some food issues. They may have diarrhea. They may have something that happens, and you want to be monitoring that because if a dog's going to be at a daycare long term, not just for the daytime but the evenings as well,
Mhm.
you need to know what's going on because I've seen boarding facilities have dogs very slowly decline and they don't identify that that's happening. So a platform scale on Amazon is $150. I've actually had a client that had one in his living room because he had four giant breed dogs, and I was at his house and there literally was next to the grandfather clock a platform scale, because he wanted to keep track of the dog's weight, not too heavy, not too lean. So I'm not asking a lot. I mean, $150 scale in a facility that is handling hundreds of dogs a day or a week is not an unreasonable request. And some of these places are big. Like some of them are
I
really big.
the facility that I worked in Nebraska, which is literally award winning, one of the top facilities I've ever seen, we ran 300 dogs a day, and that was before they added a more complete doggy daycare. Plus, we had a 40 dog a day groom shop, and that's where I was working.
Mhm.
And it was a fantastic facility.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
they offered leash walks daily if you didn't want your dog in the playgroup. They had a trail and you could do I mean, it was, set up as nicely and really maintained beautifully as you could hope for. And there are a lot of facilities like that. There's also a lot that aren't like that. So,
Right. So check it out. Look at the reviews, go visit,
mhm.
take your dog, do some homework on it. Don't just assume that they're all going to be great. Because a lot of them have popped up. It's been kind of trendy. A lot of them have popped up, and some of the facilities and some of the people just aren't up to par. So make sure that when you're taking your dog someplace that you're trusting these people to do a good job, that they are actually providing the service that you think they are, that they are not just putting the dog in a crate for the day, because you can do that at home. And I understand why people want to use these facilities. The
Right.
dogs have fun, they have a social opportunity, they get some exercise, they come home tired so that you're not like trying to entertain them all the time when you're trying to work, do your Zoom calls, do your meetings, go to your kids events, all those things. I understand why there's an appeal to it. But if you go every Wednesday and then suddenly you change to Thursdays, find out, does the dog fit with the Thursday group? What kind of things are happening, and talk to the people that work there. I
Mhm.
mean, really have a conversation with them. And then, of course, doing little things like taking them, bag of candy for Easter, or a plate of cookies, or, something. Some of those things can be really
Right.
useful as well, just so that you have a relationship with these folks, because you want to have a good working relationship with the people, not just that own it, but the people who are boots on the ground, the people who
Yep.
are picking up after the dogs, the people who are playing with the dogs, the people who are observing behaviors. So make sure that those things are happening. The other thing is, I never leave a collar on a dog, because they can get caught on the fence, on the kennel, on another dog's tooth, and very quickly you can have something that can go awry.
Mhm.
So be really careful about what kind of collar your dog is wearing so that it is safe or has a breakaway feature. You'd find out what they do. At my veterinary clinic, no dog ever wears a collar in a
Yeah.
kennel, in a run, in a cage, in an X pen. The collar comes off instantly when the dog walks in. They get a name band with their name on it, but everything else comes off the dog so that there's no risk of getting caught on anything.
Yeah, I think that is super good advice and one that we haven't actually mentioned here before, but this is a really good time to talk about it when we're talking about the play groups and also the dog parks. Think about these kinds of things. I personally know a friend of mine had two wire hair pointer puppies playing out in the yard, and they one of the puppies got the jaw stuck in the collar, and before she could get outside, um, the one puppy's neck was broken and it died.
Mhm.
So
It's terrible.
I
Terrible.
mean, and these were like 6, 8-month old puppies, right? Like
Mhm.
the one that was beautiful already had points in the show ring and
Mhm.
gone. So
Mhm.
collars are important in certain situations and can be deadly in others.
Mhm. Right. And so for the people who run facilities like this, I have a client that she has a large group of dogs at her home, and on her deck in the backyard she has a mailbox, and in the mailbox are some essential items that she could use if there's a crisis. One of them is a bolt cutter. So it's in the mailbox so that it can be outside 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, so it's always available to her, protected from the weather, but readily available. So if a dog does get caught on a tooth, a fence, whatever happens, she can grab that bolt cutter and free the dog. So whatever kinds of emergency things you might need, think about that and
Yeah,
have it available if you're running one of those facilities, because you can imagine how quickly these things can happen. And like, do you know where your bolt cutter is?
I do, but that's me.
But most people don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't.
And so I just think a lot of a lot of what Marty and I talk about is not to scare you guys. It is to just encourage you to kind of walk through some of the things because we have been around a minute and we've seen the things and we want to help you avoid the things. And so
Right.
like Marty, my dogs do not wear collars ever.
No,
Ever. The only
mine
time
don't.
my dogs have collars on is if they're out running in a hunting situation and they get a flat buckle collar. At
Yes.
home, in the crate, in a run, playing with one another, there are no collars
Yep.
in my
Yep.
house.
My dogs are flat out naked. They
Mhm.
don't wear anything. Now, if you're taking them out in the field, there are location devices you can put on the
Mhm.
dog so
Yep.
that if they are
GPS
out of
collars.
your fenced area, yeah, air tags are not recommended by Apple, but they work. So there's another device that I saw at the dog show in England. So there are devices that you can put on the collar, but those are in unusual circumstances, and dogs can get caught on collars out in the field. But
Yep.
if you have a location device on the dog, you can get to them pretty quickly. So just be aware, like Laura said, that if it can go wrong, it will.
Yes.
And we have seen enough go wrongs that we want to keep you from having those it could go wrong experiences. So we're just trying to save you some grief. And again, like she said, we're not trying to frighten you. We just want to prepare you for why you should have a conversation with, like, why can't you have a collar on the dog in the doggy daycare during the playtime or during the time they're in a crate or a kennel. Chain link fences, dog crates, all those things can get caught on a tag, and very quickly that can go very
Very
wrong.
badly. Yeah.
Doggett simplifies the puppy buying journey by connecting families with the perfect breed and responsible, health verified breeders. They are the only breeder marketplace that verifies health clearances and responsible breeding practices. Through their personalized puppy matcher tool and matchmaker services, they educate and guide buyers every step of the way, ensuring a seamless process and a perfect match for their lifestyle. From initial breed consultation to introductions with top breeders, Doggett makes responsible puppy ownership easy and stress-free.
Okay, so that's doggy daycares. And then we're going to talk about doggy parks. And then we're going to talk about some things that you can do if you decide or have not gone that route to help alleviate some of the things yourself that these facilities or opportunities are doing for other folks. So we'll give you a list of ideas at the end. Dog parks I think I rank dog parks below doggy daycares in the I would never department, but what do you say?
We see a lot of issues that come from dog parks, mostly bite wounds, lacerations, injuries from other dogs that weren't compatible with yours when you got there. And again, if you go you live in New York City and at 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon is the time you go to the dog park and it's a bunch of little dogs and your dog gets along with them, great. That's wonderful. But when you get there, make sure that there's not an additional dog that's there, somebody that showed up that's, out of sync. And so pretty quickly in those dog park situations, you start to know what people's schedules are, and compatibility can really be helpful.
Mm,
But if you show up at a different time or a dog comes that wasn't expected to be there, that can create some issues. So there are certainly reasons that I understand people want to use dog parks. I personally don't have to because I have a large fenced area. My dogs get enough exercise. They have each other to play with. I'm in a different situation than someone with a single dog that lives in an apartment in New York City or, Los Angeles or whatever, where I understand your dogs need exercise and they need off leash exercise at times, but maybe you go when there's no one else there. Maybe your dog doesn't need a playmate. Your dog just needs to run flat out and just have fun.
and, on Pure Dog Talk, and I will drop a link to this in the show notes, I interviewed way back, and it's now become very, very popular, the founder of something called Sniff Spot. And for whether you're in the city or out and about in the world, Sniff Spot is basically a private dog park with no other dogs. You rent the space for an amount of time. And there are sniff spots all over the country, all over the world. And it is random people like me or you or anybody else who has extra space, and you set it up. It's like Airbnb kind of app, and you rent the time for your dog to go run and explore and be in a situation that is entirely theirs. And so that's something that I really strongly recommend to folks as an alternative. Again, obviously, check it out, make sure that they're being maintained. But for me, dog parks are there's a cleanliness issue, right? Is the dog park being maintained? Because you don't have any control over that. At least in a doggy daycare, you have some level of knowledge and control over how that's being maintained. Um, there's the fighting, the interaction issue, which I avoid by just simply only going in there if I'm the only dog. um, but the to me the contagious diseases and or parasite issue is my concern with most like public dog
Mhm.
parks.
Right. So diseases are transmitted 5 different ways in humans, in dogs, in cattle, in horses, whatever. So fecal oral is one that I really get concerned about with dogs because that's when they go out and eat something, especially feces of another dog, of another species that, of course, is going to have parasites, bacteria, all kinds of nastiness in it. There's aerosol, which is when they cough or sneeze or bark at each other. There's direct contact where they lick each other. There's fomite transmission where they pick up something that another dog touched. So one dog rubbed on a fence, the other dog comes along, rubs on the fence, picks up ringworm from it. So there are different ways that diseases are transmitted, and you don't necessarily think about all those as a pet owner. We do as veterinarians because we have dogs that come in and their dog is sick, and how'd this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we see a lot of stool samples that come through. We send them to a diagnostic lab that does our testing for us. And we see a lot of them that come through that have a species of coccidia that doesn't belong to the dog, or a species of roundworm that doesn't belong in the dog as a parasite. And so the report comes back that we saw this parasite, but it is not a canine species. So this means the dog has been out eating XYZ's poop. So it could be bird, it could be hoofstock like deer, it could be, a variety of different things. And you may
Rabbits.
think yeah, rabbits, oh, very tasty on top of snow. Those little rabbit droppings, they're very clearly able to find those and they go right along the trail and pick those up. So a lot of times we don't realize that our dogs have done that because they're really quick. And the faster you run toward the dog to try and take something out of their mouth, the faster they swallow it. So there's a direct, an
Absolute
inverted
direct
relationship.
correlation.
Uh-huh.
100%.
So, you may not realize that the dog did that. Even if they're on a leash, they can be so fast that by the time you get to the dog, like 4 feet down the
Don't you
leash,
know the
it's already
rule? What do you
done.
have in your mouth?
Yes,
Swallows it right
exactly.
down.
Exactly, because you have to swallow fast or somebody's going to steal that wonderful treat from you. So it may seem pretty disgusting to you, but that's what dogs do is they eat stuff that they're not supposed to. And just because they're a dog doesn't mean that they're immune to what they're swallowing. So, I think it's important that people understand that. And that's why it's important to do the stool samples. It's important to do the monthly parasite control that has the heartworm preventives generally. The oral ones will have roundworm, hookworm, and whipworm preventives in them. That you do your vaccines, that you do all this stuff because we want to keep your dogs healthy and out of that process. Not only that they get sick, but they can also transmit to other dogs.
Right. So, dog parks, doggy daycares, alternatives there too. So, my favorite, like I mentioned earlier, is Sniff Spot. It really is a pretty remarkable thing. It has grown pretty exponentially since I first talked to the founder a number of years ago. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you do need to check, read reviews, make sure it's regularly picked up, make sure that it's, see what the history is. And you can do all of that on the Sniff Spot app.
Right.
Other options that that we can talk about.
Yeah, there are dog walkers that will come pick up
Mhm.
your dog if you live in a busy neighborhood that will be able to figure out what walking group your dog can go with so they can have 6 or 8 dogs. I mean, you go to New York City and there's somebody with 8 dogs on leashes. It cracks me up. I'm like,
Cracks me
you
up.
people rock. Like, you're amazing. So if you're having a difficult time finding somebody that can do that, care.com is a really good
Mm,
resource.
mm.
You go to that. There's one for the human side. So if you're looking for elder care or child care, you can look at that part of care.com. The other part is pet. So it may be um, overnight care. It may be dog walking. I have clients that live in Chicago that have dog walkers because they can't get out during the day and they work long hours. They work downtown. So in the middle of the day, somebody can come get the dog out, take him on a walk. Maybe you don't have that option or don't care to use that option, but you have a neighbor that has teenage kids or a neighbor that's elderly and they're not in a position to own a dog because of the long-term commitment, but they would love to have some dog interaction. So in the middle of the day, grandma can come over, take the dog, go on a little walk, give some treats, have a little fun, come into their house, play a little bit, and then go back to yours. So look for people in your neighborhood. This is why you should have good relationships with people in your neighborhood is they can be wonderful resources and maybe they aren't available, but they have a friend that is or a relative that is. And so you have those people that are willing to do that. And there's nothing better than some one-on-one time with grandma or grandpa to spend a little time with high school kids, junior high kids. They're old
Teenagers.
enough to be responsible. Yeah, not quite old enough to have a job, but old enough to be responsible. And again, mom and dad won't let you have a dog, or you have a dog and your dog wants a playmate. So there are some really nice relationships that you can develop in that way. And then as they grow up, they may have a little younger sibling or a friend, or their sibling may have friends. So, kind of do some networking, but care.com and then that networking. I'm a little hesitant to put stuff on social media because you never know quite what you're going to get. But there are
Not
some
advertised for
websites.
this on Craigslist is all I
Yeah,
got.
no, no, Facebook, Craigslist, Marketplace, some of those things probably not your best choice. But care.com is a pretty reliable website that has people on there that you can find that can do some of these things. If you're going to be out of town and you don't want your dog going to a boarding facility, sometimes you can find people that will either come to your home and let the dogs out, or they do in-home daycare. We have lots of people around us that do. Talk to your veterinary clinic. They may have
Yep.
staff or they may have clients that provide those services. So, really good resources of people that you can rely on. A vet tech, oh my gosh, it doesn't get better than a vet tech. If you've got a vet tech at your clinic or somebody that works at the clinic that may not be a technician but an assistant,
Mhm.
treat them well, get to know them, see if there's somebody that's compatible with you and your dog. And again, if your dog doesn't like them, I kind of look at them a little bit sideways, like, what is there about this person that my dog doesn't like? Maybe I should be aware. So listen to your dog. When my daughter was little, she had a problem with one of our daycare people. I still have to this day never figured out what it was. But trust your instincts, trust your dog's instincts. If your dog, now cats, yeah, cats hate everyone. So, you know, That's a different
Cats love
conversation.
me because I hate them. It's a
Well,
thing.
yeah.
It's
But
a cat
cats aren't
thing.
gonna be happy about strangers coming into your house. They're not happy about some of those things. That's just the way cats are. But dogs, if your dog looks sideways at the person, like they don't really like them, there's probably a reason for that. So, pay attention to that. Find somebody else that may be in that position. But, work through this because you need to have these things in place before you need them, before your cousin gets married during the summer, or before you end up in the hospital. So work through some of these relationships so you have someone available
Yeah.
to call that can help you out with those things.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to me is plan ahead, do your research, right? And just have knowledge. I think knowledge is power, and instead of just reflexively doing a thing, if we
Mhm.
have the idea to actually just focus on what we're trying to get for our pet, right? Like I want it to have exercise, I want it to have companionship, I want it to have,
Yeah.
whatever, and then make a plan for that. With
Right.
knowledge of forethought.
And as life stages of your pet change, that needs to be adjusted as well. And so just because your coworker takes their dog to the doggy daycare down the street from where you work, it doesn't mean it's the best place for your dog. So do some checking, take your dog in for an hour and see how it works out. Don't send them for the whole week until you've had some time for them to determine if that is a compatible relationship, that they're getting along. There's some boarding facilities that will have like a quiet room for the older, smaller, quieter dogs. So, find out what your options are. There's not just necessarily one solution for everything. So find out what your choices are. And if the first solution isn't working for you, keep looking until you find something that works for your dog and cat, because they should be comfortable in that setting. There shouldn't be a reason that we just put them through something.
Right.
So plan ahead. Something's gonna. I've had clients come in and they've gotten a dog during COVID, and the dog has never ever been alone 1 minute in their life. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a problem for you. And they're like, no, I'm always going to be there. Well, someday you may get sick. You may be in an accident. You may have something that happens. You may have to, your daughter gets pregnant and you fly out to see the baby. I mean, there's things that happen in your life that can be wonderful and things that can happen in your life that aren't wonderful. So you want to have some resources lined up and, post them on your refrigerator, have them in
Right.
your cell phone, have those resources available. So if something happens, you get in a car accident, you have somebody that can immediately, especially if you don't have an extended family, you need to have those resources
Right.
lined up for you.
Absolutely. And I think next week, one of the things we want to walk through is the concept of separation anxiety. And
Mm,
I think it's a really good topic, spinning off of Marty's comment just now about, I got my dog during COVID. It's never been by itself a day in its life. And now I'm, no longer work from home.
mhm.
Or I'm, whatever the situation is, the dog's 5 years old. Hello.
Mhm.
So we're going to bring you some really good tools to work through some of that and make that an easier transition for you and your dog. So
Right, because we want this to work well for all
everybody,
parties involved.
everybody,
Hmm.
absolutely. All right, we'll catch y'all next week. We'll figure out on Where's Waldo, Marty's tour of the world next week.
Surprise.
Yeah, who knows?
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you for joining us on the Marty and Laura Show. We're excited to bring you these unique, fun, fact-based conversations about pet health. We hope you'll join us on social. Stop by the website to sign up for an extra tip of the week for your pet. While you're at it, do us a favor, please, and leave a review wherever you find your podcasts. The Marty and Laura Show is produced by Pure Dog Talk, Inc., sound design and editing by Premium Audio Services.